The air in the Haveli was thick with the scent of marigolds and impending rain. Monsoon clouds hung low over Lahore's old Anarkali Bazaar, pressing against the minarets of Badshahi Mosque like uninvited guests. Inside the high-walled courtyard of the Chaudhry residence, the women moved in a hush of silk and worry. Aisha sat on a charpai in the zenana, her dupatta slipping from her head as she stared at the henna drying on her palms. The intricate paisleys looked like cages. Her mother, Nazreen, knelt beside her, adjusting the heavy gold jumkas that had belonged to Aisha's dadi. "Beta, yeah whacked Guzer Jaga," she whispered, but her voice cracked on the last word. Nazreen's own marriage had been arranged at 17. She knew the taste of this particular bitterness. Downstairs, the men were finalizing the nikah papers. Aisha's father, Chaudhry Aslam, sat with his younger brother, shaking his head at the dowry list. "Dr. Sahab eni kaha hai, wo kuch nahi mang rahi," the Maulvi read aloud, but Aslam's pride bristled. His textile mills had crumbled under Chinese imports. The only thing left was his daughter's future. Dr. Hayter Malik arrived at Maghrib, his Land Cruiser raising dust on the Kacha road. He stepped out in a crisp waistcoat, the kind that cost more than Aslam's monthly rent for the warehouse. At 32, Hayter carried the kind of arrogance that came from never hearing no. His father, the late Malik Industries tycoon, had left him hospitals in 3 cities and a reputation for buying whatever he wanted: land, loyalty, silence. He didn't look at Aisha when the nikah was read. His Kabul was clipped, efficient, like signing a prescription. Only when the Maulvi asked for the 3rd time did Aisha's voice break through the room, small, steady, final. "Kabul high." The pen scratched. The deal was done. Later, in the bridal chamber heavy with jasmine gujras, Hayter stood by the window, scrolling through patient files on his phone. Aisha sat on the edge of the takht, her lehenga pooling like spilled milk. The mirror reflected 2 strangers. "You don't have to pretend," she said in Punjabi, the language of her childhood, softer than the Urdu he used in boardrooms. "I know what this is." He turned, one eyebrow raised. "And what, exactly, is this?" "A transaction. My father's debts, your mother's wish for a suitable bahu. I'm the collateral." She laughed, bitter and sudden. "At least the collateral gets a degree. 2 more semesters of architecture, then I'm free to design your waiting rooms, Dr. Sahab." Hayter's mouth twitched, amusement or irritation, she couldn't tell. "You think I need waiting rooms designed by a girl who cries at nikahs?" The words landed like a slap. Aisha's tears had dried hours ago, leaving salt tracks on her cheeks. "I wasn't crying for you," she said. "I was crying for the library I won't finish. The site visits to Mohenjo-daro. The professor who said I could be the first woman to restore Wazir Khan Mosque." Her voice didn't waver. "But go ahead. Mock me. It's what men like you do when you're scared of women who dream." Silence stretched between them, taut as the silver zari on her dupatta. Outside, the azan for Isha floated over the rooftops, mournful and ancient. Hayter set his phone down. For the first time, he really looked at her, really saw the way her chin lifted despite the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes held the same steel he'd seen in his mother's when she'd fought boardroom battles in a male-dominated empire. "I'm not scared of dreamers," he said finally. "I'm scared of wasting my time." "Then don't waste mine." Aisha stood, the heavy lehenga rustling like dry leaves. "I'll sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, I have a 9 a.m. lecture on load-bearing arches. You can sign whatever papers you want, but my mind isn't part of the dowry." She walked past him, the scent of her rose attar lingering like a challenge. Hayter watched the door close, the click of the latch louder than any argument. In the corridor, Aisha pressed her back to the wall, heart hammering against her ribs. She had just drawn a line in a marriage built on sand. Tomorrow, the real storm would come, his family, her family, the weight of Lahore's whispering tongues. But tonight, for the first time since the engagement was announced, she breathed. Downstairs, Hayter poured himself a drink he didn't want. Through the window, he saw the lights of his hospital glowing across the city, a kingdom built on his father's name, now his to rule or ruin. He thought of Aisha's voice, steady as a scalpel. "My mind isn't part of the dowry." For the first time in years, Dr. Hayter Malik felt something dangerously close to uncertainty. The next morning, the Haveli woke to the sound of steel on steel. Hater's driver revving the SUV at 5:45 for far rounds at the hospital. Aisha was already up, her sketchbook open on the marble floor of the guest room. She'd drawn the courtyard's crumbling Jiroka in charcoal, the lines sharp with sleepless anger. When the call to prayer ended, she folded the page, slipped into a simple lawn kurta, and left before anyone could stop her. At Government College University, the campus smelled of wet earth and chai from the canteen. Aisha's friend Miriam met her at the gate, eyes wide. Tuhi sach main shaadi ho gai? Kal rat tak tu thesis ko models bana rahi ti. Miriam's voice carried over the rickshaw horns. Aisha just handed her the sketch of the Jiroka. Design critique, not gossip. In the studio, Professor Saeed pinned her Monjadaro restoration proposal to the wall. This is publishable, Aisha. But you missed the site visit deadline. Family emergency. His eyes flicked to the faint red sindoor line she hadn't washed off. She nodded once. He didn't press. By noon, her phone buzzed with missed calls, 12 from Amy, 3 from Hater. She silenced it. At 2 p.m., a black Land Cruiser pulled up outside the architecture department. Hater stepped out in scrubs, stethoscope still around his neck, drawing stares from students who recognized him from the billboards. Malik Heart Institute, saving lives, one beat at a time. He found her in the model-making lab, glue on her fingers, cutting basswood with a craft knife. "We need to talk," he said in English, the language of authority. "Patient's dying." She didn't look up. "My mother is." From embarrassment. "You left the house without Gungat, without telling anyone. The Rishtadar are calling it Buakufi." Aisha set the knife down. "Your mother married a man who built hospitals on graveyard shifts. I'm sure she survived worse than a Bahu who values deadlines." A junior boy snickered. Hater's jaw tightened. "Car. No." She wiped her hands on her dupatta. "I have a crit at 4. I'll be home by 7. We can perform husband-wife for the ants then." He stepped closer, voice low. "This isn't a performance. It's a contract. You signed it." "I signed to save my father's honor, not to become your shadow." She met his eyes, hazel, bloodshot from a night shift. "You want a wife who obeys? Hire a nurse." The lab went quiet. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Hater opened his mouth, closed it. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. He left without another word. That evening, the Haveli's drawing room was a battlefield of silk saris and judgment. Hater's Fuppo, Begum Sida, held court on the Diwan. "Dr. Sahab, ya ladki nekal rat hi apni aukat daikadi. Gar se nikal gai suba suba." Hater stood by the fireplace, still in scrubs. "She's in university. Top of her class." I checked. Aisha walked in then, portfolio under her arm, hair in a damp braid from Maghrib wudu. The room hushed. She placed a plate of sheer kurma in front of Begum Sida. Tradition demanded sweetness after conflict. "Fupoji, ye ami eni banaya. Apki liya." The old woman's scowl softened a fraction. Aisha turned to Hater. "Your mother called. The New Wings foundation stone is tomorrow. She wants us both there. 8 a.m. sharp." He blinked. "You spoke to Ami?" "She called me when you weren't answering." Aisha's tone was neutral, but her eyes said, "I'm not the enemy you think." Later, in the courtyard under the neem tree, Hater found her sketching again, this time, the hospital's new facade. "You're redesigning my building?" "Your architect used load-bearing brick for a seismic zone. It'll crack in 2 monsoons." She didn't look up. "I fixed it. Free of charge." He sat on the talk opposite her, elbows on knees. "Why?" "Because someone has to care whether your patients die under collapsing roofs." She finally met his gaze. "And because I'm stuck being Mrs. Hater Malik. Might as well make the title useful." Silence again, but different this time, less like a wall, more like a door cracked open. Somewhere inside, a pressure bandage shifted. Hater exhaled. "Tomorrow. The ceremony. You'll stand beside me. I'll stand where the cameras can't crop me out." She closed her sketchbook. "But after that, I have a site visit to Data Darbar's restoration project. You can come or not. He almost smiled. Almost. I'll send the driver. I'll take the bus. She stood, the moon catching the silver in her earrings. Good night, Dr. Sahab. As she walked away, Hayter looked at the sketch she'd left behind. A soaring atrium with light falling through jolly screens, patients' beds arranged like petals around a courtyard fountain. At the bottom, in her neat architect's hand, for the ones who wait. He folded the page carefully, slipped it into his pocket, and for the first time since the nikah, didn't reach for his phone. The foundation stone ceremony at Malik Heart Institute was staged like a political rally. Politicians in starched shalwar kameez, television crews, and a brass band playing the national anthem off-key. Aisha stood beside Hayter on the dais, her dove-gray sari chosen by his mother, the palu pinned with the Malik family crest. Cameras flashed every time Hayter's hand brushed hers, accidental, then not. Begum Zara Malik, silver-haired and formidable, gripped the silver trowel like a sword. This wing is for the women who wait, she announced into the microphone. For mothers, sisters, daughters. My Bahu, Aisha, has designed its heart. She gestured to the model Aisha had refined at 3 a.m. The crowd applauded politely. Hayter's eyes flicked to Aisha in surprise. After the stone was laid, the family posed for photos. Hayter's cousin, Danish, whispered, Bobby G, you're trending on Instagram. #Architect Bahu. Aisha forced a smile. She hated the hashtag. In the car back, Hayter loosened his tie. You didn't tell me Amy commissioned you. She didn't. I emailed the revisions to her secretary. She liked them. Aisha stared out at Gullberg's glittering malls. I thought you'd veto it. I would have, if it was bad. He paused. It's good. The compliment landed awkwardly, like a stethoscope left on a cold table. Aisha changed the subject. Data Darbar site visit is at 4. The contractor's cheating on the lime mortar mix. I need to be there. Hayter glanced at his Rolex. I have a valve replacement at 3. I'll drop you. You'll be in surgery. I'll scrub out by 3:45. Trust me. She almost laughed. Trust. The word felt foreign between them. At Data Darbar, the 400-year-old shrine hummed with devotees. The contractor, a sweaty man named Gulu, tried to hustle Aisha past the scaffolding. Bibi, ye oratan ka kam nahi. Jolly screens toot gng agar hum purana formula use Karen. Aisha climbed the bamboo ladder herself, heels dangling from her hand. Tutan ka dar nahi, Gulubai. History tuti hi jabhum ne cement si usi daba detain. She scraped a sample of the mortar, sniffed it. Portland cement 70%, lime 30%. You're shorting the slaked lime by half. Fix it or I shut you down. Hayter arrived mid-argument, still in surgical cap and clogs. The workers stared. This was the billionaire doctor, barefoot on sacred ground. He took the trowel from Gulu, tested the mix himself. She's right. The pH is off. You'll get efflorescence in 6 months. He turned to Aisha. Show me the original spec. She pulled crumpled Mughal-era drawings from her tote. Hayter studied them, tracing the jolly patterns with a surgeon's precision. This filigree, it's load distributing. Genius. He looked up. We're using this for the cardiac waiting atrium. Natural ventilation, zero energy cost. Gulu opened his mouth to protest, but Hayter's glare silenced him. Bill me for the lime. Triple shifts. I want it done before Eid. On the ride back, Lahore's evening traffic crawled like a lazy snake. Aisha's phone buzzed, her father. She let it ring. Hayter noticed. He'll want to know you're safe. He'll want to know if I've embarrassed the family. She rolled the window down. The air smelled of diesel and frying samosas. I spoke to the bank today. They're foreclosing on the warehouse next month. Hayter's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I paid the outstanding loan this morning. She turned slowly. You had no right. It was my wedding gift. To your father. To you. His voice was quiet. I didn't want it hanging over us. Us. She laughed, sharp. There is no us, Hayter. There's a contract and a hashtag. He pulled over near Liberty Market, killed the engine. The sudden silence was loud. Then let's renegotiate. Aisha stared at him. What? The contract. You want your degree, your projects, your freedom. I want. He stopped, jaw working. I want not to be the villain in your story. She studied his face, the exhaustion under the arrogance, the way his hands still smelled of surgical soap. Then stop acting like one. Start with asking, not ordering. He nodded once. Will you have dinner with me? Not at the Haveli. Not for the ants. Just us. Aisha hesitated. The city lights flickered across his eyes. One condition, she said. We go to Food Street. I choose the place. And you eat with your hands. No fork, no billionaire nonsense. The corner of his mouth lifted. Deal. At Food Street, under strings of bare bulbs, they sat on plastic chairs. Aisha ordered nahari, kulfi, and lassi in clay colors. Hater struggled with the naan, sauce dripping onto his Rolex. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time since the nikah. Between bites, he asked about her thesis. She talked about acoustic resonance in Sufi shrines, how sound could heal. He listened, really listened, the way he listened to a failing heart. Later, walking back to the car, she said, You know, the atrium design, it's not just pretty. The jolly patterns are based on heart rhythms. Sinus rhythm, specifically. He stopped. You designed a building around a heartbeat? I designed it around the people waiting to hear one again. She met his eyes. Maybe that's what this is. Waiting. Hater reached out, brushed a kulfi smear from her lower lip with his thumb. The touch lingered. Then let's not waste the wait. In the distance, the minaret lights of Data Darbar glowed soft gold. For the first time, the distance between them felt measurable, not in miles. The monsoon broke over Lahore like a fever. Rain lashed the Haveli's courtyard, turning the marble slippery and the neem trees' leaves into dark, dripping spears. Aisha stood under the arched veranda, her sketchbook soaked despite her efforts. The Data Darbar restoration was behind schedule. Gulu had forgotten the lime mortar again, and the Heritage Board was threatening fines. Her phone buzzed with Hater's name. She ignored it. Inside, the drawing room was a council of war. Begum Zara had summoned the family to discuss the annual Malik Foundation Gala, a glittering affair that raised millions for the hospital. Aisha, you'll co-chair with Hater, Zara announced, her tone final. The press loves a power couple. Aisha's stomach twisted. Bari Ami, I have a site inspection tomorrow. The shrine's dome is cracking. Zara's bangles clinked as she waved a dismissive hand. Heritage can wait. Charity cannot. Hater, ensure your wife is ready. Hater, leaning against the carved wooden pillar, met Aisha's eyes. She's not a prop, Ami. The room stilled. Danish, sipping mango lassi, choked. Begum Sita gasped, Hater beta, apni Ami sies? Hater didn't flinch. Aisha's work is real. The gala is one night. The shrine is 4 centuries. Aisha felt the ground shift beneath her. Hater defending her, in front of Zara Malik, was like watching a glacier move. She excused herself, her voice steady. I'll review the gala brief tonight. In their shared bedroom, still divided by an invisible line of pillows, Aisha spread the gala plans across the talk. Hater entered, loosening his cufflinks. You don't have to do this, he said in Punjabi, softer than she'd ever heard him. I do, she replied, not looking up. Your mother's right about one thing. The hospital needs funds. But I'm not wearing a designer lehenga and smiling for cameras while Data Darbar crumbles. He sat across from her, rolling up his sleeves. Then change the plan. Make it yours. She arched a brow. You're giving me creative control over your empire's biggest night? I'm giving you a chance to show Lahore who you are. He tapped the gala brief. Use the atrium. The one you designed. Launch it at the gala. Let the donors see what their money builds. Aisha stared at him, the rain drumming on the jalousie windows. You'd risk your mother's wrath for this? I'd risk more than that. His voice was low, almost lost in the storm. The next day, Aisha skipped the site visit and worked from the hospital's boardroom, Hater's domain. She rewrote the gala into a showcase, a 3D model of the cardiac atrium, a virtual tour of Data Darbar's restoration, and a pledge drive tying the two projects. Hayter sat in on her meetings, silent but present, his presence enough to silence skeptical executives. By evening, the atrium skeleton was ready for a test installation. Aisha stood in the half-built space, rain leaking through temporary roofing, directing workers to align the jolly screens. Hayter arrived post-surgery, still in scrubs, and handed her a steel thermos of dud patty. "You'll catch pneumonia," he muttered. She took the tea, their fingers brushing. "You're one to talk. You haven't slept in 36 hours. They stood under the dripping beams, watching the screens catch the last of the gray light. "This," Aisha said, gesturing to the latticework, "is what I want people to see. Not me in diamonds. Not you in a tux. This." Hayter's gaze followed the filigree patterns. "You know, I used to think architecture was just ego, tall buildings, big names. But this," he touched the stone, reverent. "This breathes." Her heart stuttered. She looked away, sipping the tea to hide the flush in her cheeks. The gala night arrived in a blaze of chandeliers and Chanel. Aisha wore a simple ivory anarkali with emerald embroidery, her only jewelry the jumkas from her nikah. Hayter, in a black sherwani, looked like a prince who'd wandered out of a Mughal miniature. The atrium model dominated the hall, its jolly screens backlit to mimic moonlight. Aisha's presentation, calm, precise, passionate, left the donors spellbound. Pledges poured in, 10 crore for the hospital, 5 for Data Darbar. Zara, watching from the front row, dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Begum Sita muttered, "Ye ladki to jadu karti hai." After the speeches, Hayter found Aisha on the terrace, the city sprawling below like a jeweled carpet. "You did it," he said, offering her a glass of Rue Afza. "We did it." She clinked her glass against his. "But your mother's going to make me plan next year's gala too." He laughed, the sound warm in the humid air. "Let her. You'll outshine her." Aisha leaned against the railing. "Hayter, why are you doing this? Supporting me, fighting for me. It's not part of the contract." He set his glass down, stepping closer. "Because the contract was a mistake. I see that now." His voice was raw. "I married a name on a paper. I didn't expect you." Her breath caught. The terrace felt too small, the air too thick. "And what do you see now? A woman who makes buildings sing. Who makes me want to be better." He reached for her hand, hesitant. "I'm not good at this, Aisha. But I'm trying." She let him hold her hand, the calluses from his scalpel rough against her palm. "Trying is enough," she whispered. "For now." Below, the atrium's lights glowed through the jolly, casting heart-shaped shadows on the marble floor. For the first time, the fault lines between them felt less like cracks and more like veins, carrying something vital, something new. Thulda arrived with the smell of roasting Sikh kebabs and the bleat of goats from every gully. The Haveli's courtyard had been swept clean of monsoon mud. Fairy lights now dripped from the neem like golden rain. Aisha wore a pistachio-green sharara, the dupatta slipping every time she bent to tie a toddler cousin's Rocky-style thread around a goat's horn. Hayter watched from the veranda, sherwani unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to the elbow. He had sacrificed sleep for 3 emergency transplants and still managed to look like he belonged in a cologne ad. The sacrifice was done by 10 a.m. Blood ran in the drains. Children chased soap bubbles. Aisha's father, Chaudhry Aslam, arrived with his head high for the first time in years. The warehouse foreclosure was off. Hayter had quietly bought the property and leased it back to Aslam at 1 rupee a year. No one spoke of it, but Aslam's eyes glistened when he embraced Hayter like a son. By Zuhr, the women were in the kitchen, rolling out sheer kurma dough. Aisha's hands were dusted with flour when her phone buzzed. Heritage Board emergency meeting, Data Darbar dome collapse risk. She wiped her palms on her apron, heart in her throat. Hayter found her in the corridor, already slipping on her sandals. "I'm coming," he said. No questions. The shrine was chaos. A section of the 17th century dome had cracked along an old fault line. Scaffolding leaned like a drunk. Gulu was screaming at workers. The ASI director paced in a safari suit. Aisha climbed the ladder in her Eid clothes, sharara tucked into salwar, dupatta knotted at her waist. Hayter followed, barking orders in the clipped tone he used in the oar. "Shut the sight," he told the policewala. "No devotees within 50 meters until we brace it." Aisha traced the fissure with her fingers. Hairline, but deep. The lime washed out. Gulu used river sand instead of crushed marble. She turned to the contractor, voice ice. "You risked 400 years of history for 2 lakh rupees." Gulu opened his mouth. Hayter's glare closed it. Night fell. Temporary floodlights turned the shrine into a stage. Aisha worked with a structural engineer, calculating load paths on a scrap of prayer mat. Hayter coordinated cranes, steel cables, and a team from his hospital's disaster unit. At 2 a.m., with the dome braced and the crack injected with lime grout, the ASI director shook Aisha's hand. "Miss Chaudhry, sorry, Mrs. Malik. You saved it." She was too tired to correct him. They drove home in silence, the city asleep except for late-night kebabchis. At a red light near Mini Market, Hayter reached across the console and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You're shaking," he said. "Adrenaline crash." She laughed, shaky. "And I ruined my Eid outfit." He pulled into the Haveli's gate, killed the engine. The courtyard was dark, the fairy lights unplugged. Only the moon lit the marble. Hayter got out, opened her door, then simply lifted her into his arms, Eid Sharera, dust and all. "Hayter, put me down, people will see. No one's awake." He carried her up the stairs, past the sleeping aunties on charpayas, into their room. The bed was still divided by pillows. He laid her on her side, then disappeared into the bathroom. He returned with a damp towel, knelt, and cleaned the grime from her feet with the same care he used to close an incision. Aisha watched, throat tight. "You didn't have to come tonight." "I wanted to." He didn't look up. "You fight for what's old and broken. I fix what's new and bleeding. Same war, different weapons." She sat up, took the towel from him. "Your hands are shaking too. Too much coffee. Too little sleep. Too much." He stopped, met her eyes. "Too much wanting to be the man you look at without flinching." The air between them thickened. Aisha reached out, touched the stubble along his jaw. "I stopped flinching weeks ago." He turned his face into her palm, eyes closing. "Aisha, The doorbell rang, 3 sharp bursts. Hayter frowned. At 3 a.m., they found Danish in the courtyard, soaked from the drizzle, face pale. "Bari Ami's chest pain. Ambulance is 10 minutes out." "Hayter bye, she's asking for you both." The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. Zara lay in the CCU, oxygen mask fogging with each breath. Hayter took over from the resident, barking orders, his voice steady as steel. Aisha stood outside the glass, still in her ruined sharera, clutching Zara's prayer beads. Hours later, the cardiologist stepped out. "Stable. Minor blockage. Stent in the morning." Hayter sagged against the wall, scrubs damp with sweat. Aisha handed him a paper cup of dud patty from the vending machine. "She'll be fine." He took it, hands trembling now. "I can save strangers' hearts, but not my own mother's." "You will." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We will." Dawn broke over the hospital rooftop, a thin pink line above the smog. Hayter wrapped an arm around her waist. "When this is over, when Ami's home, when the dome's restored, will you let me take you somewhere? Just us. No hospitals, no heritage boards." Aisha smiled, exhausted but luminous. "Only if you promise to eat Gol Gapi without a fork." He laughed, the sound raw and real. "Deal." Below them, Lahore stirred, chaiwalas lighting stoves, muezzins warming their throats. Above them, the sky opened, clean for the first time in weeks. The billionaire doctor and the architect bride stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the city wake, their shadows merging into one. The monsoon had passed, leaving Lahore scrubbed clean and smelling of wet earth. Zara came home from the hospital on a Tuesday, carried in on a wave of rosewater and dua. The Haveli's courtyard was strung with fresh marigolds. The neem tree had dropped its last yellow blossoms like confetti. Aisha stood at the gate in a simple cotton kurta, hair loose, no jewelry except the thin gold band Hayter had quietly slipped onto her finger the night Zara's stent went in. Zara kissed Aisha's forehead 3 times. Beta, tun muyi zindaraka. Aisha smiled. You did that yourself, Bari Ami. I just held the beads. That evening, the family gathered for a quiet dawat. No galalites, no cameras. Just biryani steaming in copper days, raita in clay bowls, and the low hum of old Noor Jahan songs from a transistor radio. Hayter sat beside Aisha on the taht, their knees touching under the tablecloth. When Danish tried to tease, Hayter flicked a pea at him. Chup kar, photographer. Focus on the sheer kurma. Later, when the aunties dozed on charpayas and the children chased fireflies, Hayter took Aisha's hand. Come. They walked to the rooftop, past the water tank and the clotheslines heavy with drying dupattas. The city below was a necklace of light, Minari Pakistan glowing white, the Ravi a dark ribbon beyond. Hayter had spread a dari under the stars, a steel thermos of kawa, 2 kulhars, and a small velvet box. Aisha raised an eyebrow. Billionaire romance on a rooftop? Cliché, Dr. Sahab. He laughed low. Wait for it. He opened the box. Inside lay not diamonds but a tiny brass model, Data Darbar's dome, perfect down to the filigree, mounted on a keychain. Engraved on the base, for the woman who holds up my sky. Her throat closed. Hayter. I had the foundry cast it from the first jolly scrap we saved, he said. You keep fixing things that are older than us. I wanted something new that's only ours. She took it, fingers tracing the warm metal. You're getting dangerously good at this. He poured kawa, steam curling between them. I have a confession. Another one. I lied on our wedding night. He set his cup down. I told you I wasn't scared of dreamers. I was terrified. Because I'd never met one who could rebuild the world and look at me like I was worth rebuilding too. Aisha's eyes stung. And now I'm still scared, he admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the original Nika paper, the one with their shaky signatures. With a lighter, he burned one corner, letting the flame curl the edge before dropping it into an empty kulhar. The paper blackened, then crumbled to ash. What was that? She whispered. The contract, he said. Gone. From now on, we write our own terms. Aisha stared at the ash, then at him. And the first term? He took her hand, pressed it over his heart. You finish your degree. I fund every site visit, every model, every crazy idea. In return, he smiled soft, you let me love you out loud. No hashtags. No boardrooms. Just us. She leaned in, forehead to his. Second term, you eat gol gappy with your hands in public. No exceptions. Done. Third term, she continued, voice trembling, we named the atrium's fountain after my Dottie. She taught me how to draw arches before I could write my name. He kissed her knuckles. Fourth term, every Eid, we come back here. This rooftop. This dari. Same kawa, same stars. Aisha laughed through tears. You're negotiating like a surgeon. I'm negotiating like a man in love. The word hung between them, luminous. She cupped his face. I love you too, Hayter Malik. Arrogant doctor, secret romantic, terrible non-folder. He kissed her then, slow, certain, tasting of cardamom and rain. The city lights blurred. The call for far floated up from a distant mosque. When they pulled apart, foreheads still touching, Aisha whispered, one more term. Name it. We adopt Gulu's apprentice. The boy who mixed the lime right every time. He starts architecture college next year. On us. Hayter grinned against her lips. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Malik. Below, a light flicked on, Zara, wrapped in a shawl, waving up at them. Oi, lovebirds! Kawa thanda ho raha hai. They laughed, the sound echoing off the rooftops. Hayter stood, pulled Aisha up with him. Hand in hand, they descended the stairs, past the sleeping Haveli, past the marigolds wilting sweetly, into the courtyard where their families waited with open arms and second helpings of sheer kurma. The arrogant doctor had fallen, yes. But the architect had risen, and together they had built something stronger than any contract. A home measured not in crores or centuries, but in heartbeats, in laughter, in the quiet certainty that some forces, once arranged, choose each other forever.